Let's go up to Manchester now. Jack Elsom's there, political editor at The Sun. Jack, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Conference is down. Last one to go.
Yes, nearly. You should get a medal for all of this at the end of the day. You've got to eat bad food for sort of weeks on end. I never thought, though, that the Tory party conference would be overshadowed by a football commentator in the likes of Gary Neville. He's getting an awful lot of flack from our viewers this morning.
I'm not surprised. I think that ordinary, decent, patriotic people will be absolutely sick to death at being sneered at by lovey, multimillionaire celebrities. Gary Neville is just the latest in a long line of celebrities to come out and trash ordinary working people. And for Gary Neville, you know, someone that was happy to wear the England colours when he ran out at Wembley, when he used to actually play for England, it's okay for him to fly the flag, but actually for ordinary people in this country, apparently that's not allowed. And, you know, I think what's been really nice about the past few weeks is that many people have found themselves finally able to actually fly the England flag, the British flag in their streets, because for so long they feared being tarnished as racists and the rest of it. But actually, it's nothing to do with race whatsoever. It's to do with pride in your country, no matter what colour you are. And I think for Gary Neville to, you know, sneer at people, I think is totally inappropriate, especially from the position of privilege which he comes from.
Yeah, and he's also quite closely aligned to Andy Burnham in Manchester. I mean, the two of them are sort of cheek by jowl mates. They seem to hang out quite a lot together. They seem to, you know, you get the impression anyway that Andy Burnham sort of advises Gary Neville on what he might want to say politically. So, I mean, is he maybe causing some problems here for Andy Burnham?
Well, potentially, because I think the Labour Party know deep down that these are their voters, right? And if they want any chance of winning the next election, it's these people they're going to have to win back. Yeah. And clearly, at the moment, Keir Starmer has made a calculation that, you know, he has to, you know, get on with, you know, waving his flag, show pride in your country, because that's what most people want to see. You're always going to have people on the fringes that are repelled by the idea of our national standards because they associate it bizarrely with basically racism and the sort of the far right sort of EDL movement. But for most people, it's the total opposite of that. It is a symbol of unity, no matter where you come from in this country, no matter what of your background. If you are British, if you are English, then you can all rally behind the same flag. And, you know, Labour do realise that, I think, and you saw a lot of flag waving at the Labour Party conference. And for Gary Neville, he seems to be on the total wrong side of this one.
He does. Let's have a quick look at what he actually said about these angry white men.
I was driving home from Salford City last night. I was driving actually to Salford City, going down a Littleton Road, seeing 60, probably 50 or 60 Union Jack flags. And I just kept thinking as I was driving home last night that we're all being turned on each other. And the division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men who know exactly what they're doing.
Yes. So anyway, I guess, you know, we'll see how that all ends up for Gary Neville. Let's talk a bit about the state of the Conservative Party. You're up there, Jack. We were just talking to Henry Hill, who's written a piece about how this is kind of Kemi Badenoch's last stand, if you like. You know, they're saying an awful lot of things. They're throwing a lot of things out there, like red meat, but even their own party isn't agreeing with an awful lot of it.
Yeah, this is the problem now for Kemi Badenoch. It's so difficult. You know, back in the day, when we had a big two-party system, you would just know who your enemy is, Tories versus Labour, and you could sort of jockey over the centre ground. The problem for Kemi Badenoch now is that she's really fighting on two fronts. She's got Nigel Farage, who she's bleeding votes to on her rightward flank, and she's got Keir Starmer, obviously, the incumbency to her left. And so where does she go? Where is the ground which she can fight on and get clear blue water and an opening with both sides? Clearly she has to go toe-to-toe with Nigel Farage on something like migration to show she is serious about getting a grip of our borders, both illegal and legal. But if you are totally incensed, as many people are, by the high levels of migration in this country, then you probably are going to be more enthused by the Reform Party, because Nigel Farage clearly has been talking about this for a long time and doesn't have all of the baggage which the Tories do of 14 years. So I think that really Kemi Badenoch now, and it's plastered all over this conference hall, is going to be talking more about the economy. The sort of Tories' sort of more comfortable turf. She's going to be, Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, is out today talking about sound money and finances, because their calculation, the Tory party, is that Reform are making pretty big spending commitments. Labour obviously going to be putting up taxes as expected in the budget, and so the opening for them, they see, is sort of getting back to that fiscal discipline, spending restraint, and that's why you're seeing Mel Stride today come out and talk about benefit cuts, overseas aid cuts, shrinking the size of the civil service, getting rid of some of the net zero schemes. The problem is, Mike, is that whether that will actually turn the dial remains to be seen, because many people currently aren't listening, and when you get into that position where you are now the third party in the polls, way behind Labour, way behind Reform, it's very, very difficult to cut through.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, it's a new poll that came out last night, you'll have seen, from JLP Partners, saying for the first time who you think would make the better Prime Minister, and now it's Nigel Farage, and it was only in March that Keir Starmer had a 10-point lead over Nigel Farage, and it was the one thing that Labour were kind of clinging to, saying, yeah, but at least people still have faith in Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. Well, not anymore. It's now 35% Nigel Farage, 34% Keir Starmer, don't know, 31%, but Kemi Badenoch's name doesn't even feature.
Yeah, you're right. It's so difficult for Kemi Badenoch at the moment. I mean, you know, there's two schools of thoughts really, I think, here up in Manchester. The first one is that if you come to the conclusion, as many members and MPs are, that Kemi Badenoch is not going to be Prime Minister, is it better to manoeuvre now and try and unseat her, and so another leader has about 3 or 4 years to bed in and get to be known by the public? The second school of thought is that the Conservative Party, one of the main reasons it got kicked out of office last time was just the sheer instability and infighting and machinations that went on for the best part of 5 years. And so changing leader again would just make them look even more ridiculous than they already are, and could sink even lower. And so this is really what the Conservative Party is now grappling with. Kemi Badenoch, I think to her credit, is trying to make the case, which is, you know, give me some time. You know, leaders cannot change things overnight. We had our worst election defeat in a generation the last time around, and for anyone to be able to revive those fortunes so quickly would be asking too much. And also she goes, think about where Keir Starmer was back in 2021 when Boris Johnson was walking on water, could do no wrong. Nobody thought he could be Prime Minister, and 4 years later, obviously, he managed to get into number 10. But the problem for Kemi Badenoch is that she's fighting on two fronts, and it's just so difficult now when there's that squeezed middle ground which she's trying to fight on, to get any sort of cut through and to get any sort of salience is very, very tricky.
And as soon as she says anything which is perceived to be on the right of the Conservative Party, a whole load of Tories come out and say, oh, I don't think we want to do that, like the ECHR pronouncement, and then also similarly, you know, deporting 150,000 people a year. You know, there's a lot of Tories who don't feel as though that is what they regard as the new Tory party.
Totally. The Conservative Party has always been a broad church, but you have to think about what's left in the membership now of the Conservative Party, because some people have gone to Reform. Most people haven't gone to Labour or the Lib Dems, and so you are left with a pretty big rump in the Conservative Party membership of what we used to call the traditional Tory wets. You know, the people like, you know, David Gauke and Dominic Grieve, the people to whom leaving the ECHR would be absolutely, you know, incomprehensible and repellent, and now they are signed up to a policy which would take them out of it, and they're rallying under that leader. Even people within the shadow cabinet, you think about people like James Cleverly, the shadow housing secretary, or Victoria Atkins, the shadow environment secretary, who in the past have come from that one nation perspective and have totally ruled out leaving the European Court of Human Rights. And so for them now, it must be a pretty uncomfortable position to essentially be presented by Kemi Badenoch with the fait accompli that we are going to be leaving the ECHR. So there is clearly a big difference in the Conservative Party. There's always been big differences in any party, but when you can get away with it more in government, being a broad church, because you have a clear direction in a clear government, and yes, you might get fickle backbenchers, but when you're trying to put actually a case as a united party across the country, it's difficult if you have splits.
It is. Tomorrow is the anniversary of October 7th, the second anniversary of what that awful day was in 2023. Keir Starmer, in his wisdom, decided to go to India, apparently, according to one report, to visit Prime Minister Modi and to reaffirm the shared vision of India and the UK. I mean, he's going to get accused of just not being here again, isn't he?
Yeah, so I think the plan is for him to fly out late tomorrow night, and so I think you probably can expect him to mark the October 7th anniversaries in some way. I mean, by the way, it seems at the moment, from my count, there's no less than 10 of these hate marches going on tomorrow, the pro-Palestine marches.
Yeah.
So I think ministers are going to come under enormous amounts of pressure to call these things out. We saw some big overtures by the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood yesterday about banning these repeat protests. It's time now for them to put their money where their mouth is and really call out marches that are happening on the anniversary of that horrendous atrocity in Israel. And so I think that you can probably expect some words from the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary and the like. The Prime Minister's going to India. It's all about forging trade ties. What I would really want, I think, from the Prime Minister over there is to talk about the immigration problem, because you will remember, Mike, that the first migrant in the one-in, one-out deal we sent back, who came over in a small boat to France, was an Indian migrant.
Right.
And that is because we couldn't deport them to India. Now, if we're going to be doing all this trade with India, I think most viewers would probably want to know why India are not taking back their illegal migrants that that have come over here on small boats. So maybe the Prime Minister could talk to Narendra Modi about that as well.
Right, because they seem to have a deal with France. So we sent them to France, and then the French sent him to India under part of their new deal. So it seems mad, given that we've also promised India all sorts of tax breaks to bring businesses into this country and employ people from India. I mean, it doesn't seem. I mean, again, it seems like one-way traffic, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the whole India trade deal at the time did raise concerns, because what it would mean is that essentially it would be cheaper for companies to hire Indian workers over here, because they wouldn't have to pay national insurance. Yes, there is a quid pro quo where if a British worker went over to India, likewise, they wouldn't have to pay national insurance. But at a time where we're trying to get people off welfare and into and into the workplace, British people, so they're less reliant on benefits. People might think that that is a bit of a funny one. He's got Keir Starmer as well. He's trying to strike this Indian trade deal. The people in the Treasury, Rachel Reeves, various other ministers and officials, believe that trade deals are the answer to their growth problem, whether that is with America, whether that is with India, less friction with the EU. And so that is why they are making big plays about trying to go over there and strike these deals. They've got a massive black hole coming up in the budget, about £30 billion by some counts, and so they see growth as the answer to that. But the history of this is that trade deals, sometimes they can make a bit of difference, but in terms of massively putting rocket boosters under the economy, sometimes they don't really work that way.
One final one for you, Jack. This incredible story about the Chinese spying scandal. The question is China friend or foe? Jonathan Powell is facing calls to appear before Parliament. He's Starmer's national security advisor, a very senior man, worked very closely with Tony Blair back in the day. He may be called before Parliament to explain why charges have been dropped against two British men. How big a scandal is this?
I think it's a big scandal brewing, and as with most scandals, Mike, as you know, it's often the cover-up rather than the actual crime, which is the undoing of people. And for Jonathan Powell not to come to the bar of the House of Commons and answer questions or at Select Committee, I think is beyond the pale. This is a man who wields enormous power and influence in Keir Starmer's government. He's the National Security Advisor, and just because he's a political appointment, Downing Street seem to believe that is a good enough excuse for him not to be accountable. He sits in the National Security Committee. He's one of the Prime Minister's inner circle, and for him, who allegedly was part of this meeting to essentially collapse this Chinese spying trial by saying that China is not an enemy because they don't want to offend Beijing, to whom they have been getting much, much closer in the past year. He should come before the House of Commons and lay out exactly the situation. We saw Shabana Mahmood yesterday sort of give a half denial, but not really, about whether she knew or was aware that this meeting took place. So yes, I think that MPs, especially Tory MPs who wield powers on select committees, will be wanting to question Jonathan Powell.
It's going to run for a while, this one, I think. Jack, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, up in Manchester at Tory Party conference.